Jehovah God. And to do that, we can't let fear of man distort our priorities. Now, why is our standing with God even important? Well, let's open our Bibles or your devices to Romans chapter 14, verse 12. That's Romans 14, 12. There is, so then each of us will render an account for himself to God. See, that applies to all of us in here today, whether you're a parent who's making decisions for your household, including how to raise your children. Maybe you're a young person who's shaping your identity and shaping your values. Or maybe someone who's managing their time and their energy, their resources day to day. Think about maybe a plant that's sitting on a windowsill. If you ignore it, what's going to happen to it? You don't give it any water, no sun, well, that plant is going to start to fade. But even just a little bit of daily care to that plant, it perks up. That plant grows strong.
That's good.
That's your spiritual standing. Jehovah doesn't expect perfection, but he does look for daily nourishment and conscious effort. And friends, we know that we live in a world that's obsessed with how people look, how people or what they wear and how they're perceived. And because of that, let's take a look at Proverbs 29:25. That's Proverbs 29:25. There is trembling at men as a snare, but the one trusting in Jehovah will be protected. Now, did you notice the scripture that we must learn to trust in Jehovah, whose appeal will bring everlasting benefits? And that, friends, is the only approval that we need to worry about. Mm-hmm. And of course, we know that it's not easy to do that. We know that fear of man can creep in very, very quietly from time to time. Like when we hesitate to speak up for our faith, or hesitate to make choices that we know are right, but we don't make those choices because of fear of what somebody else might think. Let's remember, Jehovah's approval brings peace, brings purpose, and his approval brings eternal hope. And that, in the world's approval, well, we know that their approval shifts with every trend. Whatever's hot this week, that's what they're going to approve. And the world doesn't make it easy for us, do they? As we strive to maintain our spiritual standing, we find ourselves under pressure constantly from people around us, whether it's from social traditions, prevailing principles, or direct attempts to make us compromise our values. And that's nothing new. We know that Jesus himself had to face such pressures. Did you guys have your regional convention already? You did? Oh, I don't want to ruin anything there. But of course, we know the account of Jesus, right? Matthew chapter 4, verses 3-10. And I'm sure y'all know that there's videos that are going to be present there. So, but we do recall the account there that Satan tempted Jesus on 3 different occasions, right, to try to displease Jehovah God. Yet we know that Jesus didn't waver from his relationship with Jehovah. His priority was to honor and please his Father. Now, he wasn't concerned with what Satan thought about him, or what the Pharisees or anybody else thought about him. His priority was pleasing his Father. He wasn't going to allow his relationship with Jehovah God to be compromised, no matter what the devil threw at him. Now, you might be thinking, but Jesus was perfect. I'm not perfect, so please don't compare me to Jesus. You know, that's fair enough. Personally, I would never, ever in my life want to be compared to Jesus Christ. But let's open our Bibles to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Hebrews 12:1. There reads, so then, because we have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us throw off every weight and the sin that easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. As you notice the scripture there, it says that we have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us. See, these are individuals, imperfect people, just like you, just like me, who set aside every hindrance and the sin that could easily ensnare them. These individuals chose God's approval over human praise, and they maintain a good standing with Jehovah by demonstrating their faith. Their example shows that imperfect people can indeed hold firm to their convictions and can please Jehovah God. We are aware that there's many Christian men and women who continue to do that the same thing, faithfully choosing God's standards over the standards of the world. So for the next few minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of these encouraging examples. Think about how we can draw inspiration from their faith, how they gained Jehovah's approval, and then reflect on how we can imitate that faith. So first, we'll start off with Abel. Right? Now, Abel, we know his account. He was born to a complicated home. His parents rebelled against Jehovah God. They lost his favor. They were thrown out from the Garden of Eden. Probably Abel could have thought, well, my parents rebelled. I don't need to worry about pleasing Jehovah God. I can do whatever I want. Well, we know he didn't think that way, right? Genesis 4:4 tells us that he brought his firstlings of his flocks as an offering to Jehovah God. Now, what was Jehovah's response to that? Well, not only did Jehovah find favor in Abel, Hebrews 11:4 tells us that Jehovah accepted his offering and called him righteous. That's beautiful, isn't it? Now, what about in our day? Are there individuals with families or within families who don't have faith in Jehovah? Definitely. Let's take a look at one example. Casimir from Togo, West Africa. Now, this example is found on February 1st, 1999 Watchtower, page 8. It mentions as Casimir advanced his Bible study, he began to face opposition from his own family, who practiced ancestor worship and consumed unbled meat left over from sacrifices. When Casimir politely refused to eat the meat, his family threatened him and demanded that he leave their home. He endured significant challenges, including going without enough food for 3 months. Now, did Casimir lose fear? No, he didn't. He didn't allow fear, even from his own family, to sway his convictions. Was his endurance rewarded? Well, definitely. The account reads, Casimir continued to grow spiritually, dedicating his life to God and getting baptized. He was later appointed as a ministerial servant and attended the 4th class of the ministerial training school in Togo. Today, he finds joy in volunteer work at the branch. Now, when we reflect on that experience, we can recall Jesus' words at Matthew 10:34 or Matthew 10:35, 36, and 39, right, which offer reassurance and encouragement to us. Let's take a look at that real quick. Matthew 10:35 and 36. Matthew 10:35 says, For I came to cause division with a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Indeed, a man's enemies will be those of his own household. But look at verse 39. It says, Whoever finds his soul will lose it, and whoever loses his soul for my sake will find it. Again, encouraging words. Right? Casimir understood those words. And if you're experiencing opposition from your family because of your pure worship to Jehovah God, remember the example of Abel and Casimir. Be assured that your faithful perseverance is definitely seen and is valued by our Creator, Jehovah God. You know, think about a lighthouse in rough waters. It doesn't move with the waves. It stands tall. It stands ready and steady. You might be the only believer in your family, but again, like Abel and like Casimir, your faithful endurance is shining light, and Jehovah sees that. So rest assured of that. Now let's talk about Enoch. Obviously, we're familiar with his example, or maybe familiar with it. The Bible tells us that Enoch walked with God, and he did so not in a peaceful environment, but among ungodly, hostile people. He proclaimed Jehovah's judgment with conviction, and because of that message, right, we know that he faced severe persecution, so much so that individuals in that area actually tried to kill him multiple times. Right? But did Enoch, did he at any moment stop proclaiming his message? No, we know that he didn't. Now, what about some modern day examples of individuals just like Enoch who remain steadfast in declaring Jehovah's judgment despite facing serious threats of violence? Well, we have some of those. The September 1st, 2001 Watchtower, page 26, mentions the example of Najib Salim from Lebanon. He mentions that during the Cold War of the late 70s and 80s, that he was conducting a Bible study with a family who had been zealous churchgoers. Their good progress and learning Bible truths irritated the clergymen, and because of that, they came and abducted me. However, I was able to reason with their leader, explaining that if they were really Christians, they would not behave in a barbaric manner. At that moment, he commanded the car to stop and ordered me to step out. Now, did that tactic make our brother stop declaring the good news to people? No, not at all. On another occasion, our brother Najib was kidnapped by 4 militiamen. After many threats, their leader, who said that he was going to shoot me, suddenly changed his mind, and I was released. Now, surely at this point, our dear brother said, enough is enough. I'm good. I'm not going to preach anymore. No, not at all. At that time of him relaying the experience, our dear brother was 88 years old. Him along with his wife were still moving strong, serving Jehovah God, right, at such a late age in time. Again, a beautiful experience for us to follow. And examples like this are seen all around the world, brothers. What's been the outcome of our brothers' continued proclamation of Jehovah's word in places where persecution, there's been severe issues of violence and things of that nature. Well, in Spain, Dominican Republic, for example, in the 50s, our brothers, they were persecuted, beaten, banned. But today, in these places, the newest numbers, 2024 yearbook, mentions that there's over 125,000 witnesses in Spain and over 38,000 in the DR. Again, that shows how our brothers put their faith in Jehovah God. So think about this. What's one moment this week that you could have spoke up about Jehovah, but for some reason you didn't? Do you think Enoch would have stayed silent? Let's talk about Abraham and Sarah. Powerful examples of faith, especially when it comes to making material sacrifices and spiritual pursuits. Genesis 12:1, there, if we recall, Jehovah directed Abraham to leave behind the comforts of Ur. If we don't know, Ur was a city that was known for its wealth, advanced homes, impressive educational systems. There was diggings that were done of that city. There was findings that revealed that Ur was a sophisticated center. Private homes that boasted 13, 14 rooms surrounded by a paved courtyard. Right, the educational tablets that were found there demonstrated knowledge of mathematics and writing. This was a tremendously advanced society for their time. Despite that security and prosperity that Abraham and Sarah could have enjoyed, they willingly obeyed the command that Jehovah gave them to leave that place. Of course, we know that decision involves significant sacrifice, but they showed their deep trust in Jehovah God's direction and their willingness to put spiritual goals above material comfort. Right? We know that their journey stands as a lasting example of faith in action. A great one, again, that we today can follow. But what about today? Are there some examples of brothers and sisters who've done the same thing? Absolutely. The experience of Mark and Paula. They're a married couple from Canada. Now, this was brought out in January 15, 2008, Watchtower, pages 17 and 19. Both of these individuals mentions that they worked part-time while serving as regular pioneers. Mark was employed at a company specializing in advanced robotic systems for space agencies. So this brother was making some good money, I'm sure. One day, his supervisor offered him a promotion to a full-time role with a substantial salary increase. Now, despite that, the experience mentions that Mark's desire to focus on disciple-making work was much stronger. Paula, his wife, in the meanwhile, she was a secretary at a hospital who received a very good salary, and as well, the experience mentioned that she wanted to increase her availability as a full-time pioneer in Jehovah's service. Now, it mentions after giving the matter a prayerful thought, Mark and Paula both decided to resign from their positions to devote themselves more fully to spiritual pursuits. Following their decisions, Mark was offered an even higher salary as an incentive to remain, while Paula was offered the highest paying secretarial position at the hospital as an executive secretary. Now, obviously, both of these people now say, oh, man, Jehovah's blessing us. Now we can take all this money, live comfortably. No, they didn't say that. Not at all. Both remained committed to their choice. Soon after, they received an assignment to serve as special pioneers in a small, isolated congregation in Canada. Now, reflecting on that decision, Paula says, when you leave your job in the comforts of a familiar home, you have to place all your trust in Jehovah. We did, and Jehovah blessed us. I now use the energy that I formerly spent on my job to help people spiritually. I am overjoyed to serve in this assignment. Friends, this example reminds us that material sacrifices made for kingdom interests are noted by Jehovah. He sees that. And he provides joy and fulfillment for those who wholeheartedly pursue spiritual goals. See, friends, Jehovah values sacrifices like that, even when other people might think that it's irrational. Let's take a look at Mark 10, 29 and 30 to affirm that. Mark 10, 29 and 30. There is, Jesus said, truly I say to you, no one has left house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or fields for my sake or for the sake of the good news who will not give 100 times more now in this period of time. Houses, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, and fields with persecutions. And in the coming system of things, everlasting life. Again, reassurance that when we put Jehovah first, we will be blessed. Moses was another example, especially when it comes to prioritizing spiritual matters over material gain. Now, when discussing prominent figures who place spiritual goals above material interests, obviously Moses will come to mind. He stands out as a powerful model for us to follow. The book of Acts, chapter 7, verses 20 through 22 shows that Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. He became a person of considerable influence and ability. Now, despite those advantages, Moses willingly relinquished his worldly status and riches. He chose instead to seek God's approval rather than the recognition of his peers, of humans at that time. Now, of course, we know that today, from a secular standpoint, Moses' decision would look unwise. What are you thinking? Why would you do that? But as he turned away from wealth and prestige, we saw that Jehovah valued his faith-driven priorities. And then what happened? Well, Jehovah rewarded him. Right? We know he rewarded him with the privilege of leading an entire nation out of Israel, or out of Egypt. Now, do we have some modern-day examples of that? Of course we do. Many today have also set aside materialism and worldly ambition, just like Moses, in favor of spiritual pursuits. Instead of striving for a materialistic lifestyle, these brothers, these sisters, they have made decisions that reflect their desire to want to serve Jehovah much more fully. Example of that is found in March 7, 2007, Awake. That of Sonia Quevedo from Mexico. Mentions that after her baptism in 1970, Sonia began working at a bank. In 1974, she applied to serve as a pioneer elsewhere and soon received her assignment. When notifying her employer, Sonia was informed she had been selected as one of 7 women to become assistant managers, an unprecedented opportunity within the company, offering both prestige and financial benefit. 1 of 7. Now, as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, no doubt, being tempted, she may have wanted to get that job out of 7 people, right? She would have been a pioneer, first female ever. Picture plastered everywhere. Other people, other little girls were seeing her. I want to be just like her. Right? Despite the historic offer, the account mentions Sonia chose to decline the promotion, expressing her determination to serve God more fully. Just 2 days later, she left her job and she began her new assignment, embodying the principle that we find in Matthew 6:33. Let's turn there real quick. Matthew 6:33. Mentions there, keep on then seeking first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you. Friends, such accounts provide assurance that Jehovah truly blesses those who prioritize kingdom interests in their lives above anything else. Now, what about you? What if you're offered a high-paying job, but it involves maybe something unethical? What would Moses do? What would you do? Jehovah rewards those who put kingdom interest first, and we see that in these examples. Rahab, one last example here. Now, we know Rahab, she was not raised knowing Jehovah God, but when she heard of his power, she made life-altering choices. Right? We know she protected his servants at great personal risk. I mean, she could have died, her whole family could have been killed, but because of that great act, she was counted as one of the faithful in the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 11. And again, as another great example for us to follow today. Now, what about today? Examples? Of course there is. There was an example in September 1st, 1980, Watchtower. Now, for safety reasons, the name of this brother and the country where he came from weren't mentioned in there. But it does say that he was an elder, and it mentions after enduring years of imprisonment and harsh beatings, he traveled to the United States to receive specialized training from the Watchtower Society. While there, he was given the opportunity to relocate to a country where persecution of Jehovah's Witnesses did not exist. Now, of course, one of us may assume that, he accepted this position, right? Oh, I don't have to look over my back. I'm not worried about going to jail, and I'm good. I'll take that assignment. No, he didn't do that. The elder made a conscious decision to return to his original country, fully aware that he would likely face further imprisonment and ongoing persecution. Now, why would he do that? Well, the account says that his choice wasn't driven by personal comfort, but by deep love for his spiritual brothers and sisters. He understood that their spiritual growth and benefit will be greatly enhanced by his continued presence and support, even if it meant sacrificing his own freedom. For him, caring for the support and supporting his fellow believer was a privilege much more precious than living free from danger. Now, what about us? That example prompts each of us to reflect, could we say the same thing about ourselves? Of course, while we admire our dear brothers and sisters here in the congregation, would we be willing to give up our personal freedom or even our own lives for their well-being? Will we be willing to do that? That's a profound demonstration of love that Jesus spoke of at John 13, 34 and 35. Let's take a look at that. John 13, 34 and 35. Mentions there, I am giving you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also love one another. By this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love among yourselves. Love is more than words, it's action. While we may never be called upon to risk our lives, we are all invited to show self-sacrificing love as we pursue kingdom interests and maintain our fine standing with our Creator, Jehovah God. Psalms 51:5 reminds us that we are born imperfect, that from the moment that we take our first breath, we are alienated from Jehovah God. But thankfully, through Christ's ransom, we can be reconciled. Look at John 3:36. It says, the one who exercises faith in the Son has everlasting life. Friends, and now is the time to do just that. Think about a fire alarm. When a fire alarm goes off, you don't sit there. You don't debate. What does that sound? No, you move. You get out of that building immediately. Friends, today, spiritually speaking, the fire alarm is ringing. We hear it. Every time we study the Bible, every time we attend our meetings, we see prophecy unfolding, we hear that fire alarm going off. So now is a favorable time. Today is a day for us to act. Whether you're newly interested or a long time in the truth, Jehovah wants your heart. What one area in your life needs realignment with Jehovah's standards? Let's go back to our heavenly resume real quick. Now, again, Jehovah doesn't expect flawless formatting. He wants authenticity. Jehovah wants faith. He wants loyalty. Just like that of Abel, of Enoch, of Abraham, of Sarah, of Moses, Rahab. Just like that of Casimir, Najib, Mark, Paula, Sonia, and those in banned countries. Friends, you can walk with God. You can receive that stamp of approval that says, this servant belongs to me. Ask yourself, am I pursuing Jehovah's approval or someone else's? If that resume needs refreshing, today is the perfect time to start editing it. Jehovah is reviewing. He's not rejecting. He's ready to welcome anyone who truly wants to live with him forever. Now, after reviewing that spiritual resume, imagine that you're called back for an interview. now with Jehovah. This isn't an evaluation of your secular achievements, but rather an opportunity for you to highlight the qualities that you've developed. Those qualities that are deep rooted in faith, in loyalty, and devotion to Jehovah's standards. And during the interview, Jehovah's focus is on the moments where you have demonstrated kindness, where you've demonstrated perseverance in faith, and committed to living by his standards. What matters to him, friends, is not perfection, but the authentic love and faithfulness that inspire your actions. Recognizing that this interview represents the culmination of ongoing spiritual growth brings a sense of assurance, does it not? The greatest qualification is a heart that continually strives to align with Jehovah's will. Rest assured, friends, that your sincere efforts to strengthen and maintain a good standing with him are deeply appreciated and valued. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Leva.